and other parts of the globe. We're going to go ahead and start things off by introducing some folks on the panel. We got our regular Carl coming in from down under. How's it going, Carl?
Good morning to everyone. Welcome to tomorrow. It's a nice, beautiful, sunny day here, blue sky. We're in the middle of spring at the moment.
Nice. And you got your buddy Grant, who should be popping back in here shortly. I'm filling in for Grant, but he'll be popping in here just as soon as he's finished working on little production stuff. We got Sky, who's just down the road from me. Hey, Sky, what's up?
Well, it is still cold, but the sun came out amazingly today, as you know, here in the Pacific Northwest. But it is fall in this part of the universe. And Carl, I will send you a really large leaf.
There's some really cool ones. We just
Thank
found
you.
one just on our dog walk right before coming out here.
Yep.
And then a fan favorite, Tony Mobley, and from Georgia. What's going on, Tony?
Greetings. We have the Seattle weather here today. It's raining and a little bit cool.
Nice. Tony, what was your career? So you started what to what to what? Just
Oh,
quickly,
my
just like
career?
the quick, yeah, where'd you start? Like just the real quick
Um,
synopsis.
okay, I started when I first graduated from college. I worked as a supply teacher, substitute teacher for 2 years. Left to get a master's in education. Never got the master's in education. Met my wife. Came back. Moved 100 miles away. Then moved back to Atlanta. Um, Worked in uh, industry. I worked for Xerox for about 5 years, and then went back to my first love, social work. I did that up until 20, 2000. And then 2000, I went back in education, and I've had just about every job in the school system except for principal. So
That's what I
I've
was going to
worked
ask. I wasn't sure. Did you wind up So what was the final role that you played in education at the very end?
a special education teacher for high school
Okay.
autism.
So everything but principal. Cool. All right. That maybe that'll give our folks in the audience something to ask a question on, because that's a pretty illustrious career. Because I'm already wondering what you did at Xerox, but hold that. Maybe somebody will ask it, like Roscoe or one of our peeps. That I see Roscoe's already populating our question bank. So Roscoe, throw Tony a bone. Omar is next on the panel, coming in from Costa Mesa, California. Or yeah,
That's right, Costa Mesa, California, here in Orange County. We've got a small production company down here. We do live events and all kinds of video production. So it's really nice to be here in the evening where I'm from. Doesn't happen very often on this show, so or on office hours.
nice. And then I know you've been doing some live events recently. It was cool to see behind the scenes and after hours. I don't know how many people that are viewing know that in Discord there's something called after hours alerts, and sometimes things will be shown that we don't want to show publicly. And one of the cool things that Omar did was he showed the infrastructure essentially of what it looks like to set up in a casino. I think it was a casino ballroom type, where a
Yeah.
boxing event was going on, and then MMA that day. And so we got to see his switcher, the camera feeds, the fiber lines. Some of the stuff is very fascinating because we know what you could do with a truck, an EP truck or something like that, with the really big guns and big budget. But how do you do it when you're, like a 100th of the budget? Like if you're going to use an ATEM and some more normal person gear. And Omar's done a fascinating job of putting all these pieces of the puzzle, because he also does a surf show, which I think we've talked about in the past. We do have a couple questions, but before we get to those, I did want to check in with Carl and just kind of get a little what's the state of the photography industry, because I know you're more in that world. And then there was also some we were talking about before the show with what's coming up with the 4.1 streaming out of the web presenter with the higher audio count.
So I'm an event photographer. So essentially, my job is very hard to be done by AI, obviously, because um, now I do large events. So we're talking like 500,000 people. Occasionally do a wedding if I'm asked, but generally I don't really promote myself to do weddings. Um, and I also do headshots. So the headshot part of the industry is interesting because people will take a headshot they previously have, and they can use AI to change the background and their dress, essentially, what they're wearing. So that is one aspect where someone's like, let's call it a LinkedIn photo. They can change their appearance in a LinkedIn photo with AI. So that's one part of my business that's kind of interesting, and I will probably do my business where I'll actually change the background now to more of a flat background to allow people to use the photography that I take of them in AI later on. So I'm going to make essentially AI friendly headshots for like LinkedIn and corporate photos. So corporations can use my photos. It won't be a green screen, but it will probably be a flat grey rather than a pattern grey, which some people like. But I will tell the client, hey, look, I'll give you a flat grey so you can choose your background later on using AI software, yada, yada. And if the client says, no, we want a pattern grey, we want a location, so that's fine, we'll do that. In the event photography space, obviously until Optimus knows how to take a photograph, let's say 5-10 years from now, I'm pretty much safe. So because of just the dynamics of event photography, and it requires, it's a communication between you and the person taking a photograph of them to be ready, because they want the best photograph of them at the event. So candids are good, but candids, you can get people blinking, their mouth open talking, whatever. So most people like to be looking at the camera or just aware, so they have the correct expression on their face. So which is a little bit harder for AI to do right now. But where AI is important, I think, in the future of event photography is the editing side, because I shoot about 1,000, 2,000 photographs a week, and I have to edit all those photographs. With computational photography, we do now have very good face detection. So with AI, I think what you can do or assisted AI or assisted algorithm, is you can tell, you go through the photographs and you say which face you want to, is the subject, even though if you've got a group, you pick one of the faces, and then it will do all the color balance and all the essentially adjustment of the levels based on that face. Now the iPhone is very good at doing this in real time. And I can envision, and kind of at the moment, Apple Photos does this as well with stuff that's not taken on the iPhone. So if you take a photograph that's just a RAW or a JPEG and you say optimize, that's kind of what it's doing. It's looking for faces, and then it will adjust the levels and the color balance and all that kind of stuff based on that face that it sees. But it's whichever face is usually closer to center and largest. You don't get to choose. But there will be AI tools coming soon that you will get to choose, and these will come from the manufacturers. So Canon, Nikon, Sony, Apple, of course, already has this. They are a manufacturer of a camera, of course. But you'll have granular control over which face and which style. So essentially, what some people call in video world LUTs, what they call filters in photography world. I don't use either of those. I simply create a look myself manually. And if nothing changes, if I do an event where the lighting or nothing changes, the only thing that changes is where I'm located in the room, then I can copy and paste one style. Essentially, I'm just changing the black levels really, because I shoot RAW. RAW is going to have a much wider dynamic range, and we don't necessarily want that in photography. We want to kind of make sure there's something black in the scene, because blacks will turn out gray in RAW photos. So essentially make sure you have blacks, and then you can copy that to all the photos if you know your settings don't change. And I don't change. I shoot manual camera settings and manual flash settings. So none of my settings ever change during an event. So if I set up one photograph for black levels, I can copy that to all of them. As long as we're not going in. So if I'm indoors, outdoors, that changes obviously. And if it's midday sun, that's the hardest one to edit, of course, if you're in the midday sun and you're outdoors. But so AI is going to have this kind of just...
Who owns these now? Or do you you're like work for hire and you just hand them the card and all the images are now theirs and they can do whatever AI?
No, so no one ever gets the RAW. So essentially they're paying as a turnkey service. What they want is edited JPEGs. That's what they want, high quality edited JPEGs. So it's turnkey for them.
Just as you went off on this AI part, I was just like, well, wait, are they getting the highest resolution image to go ahead and put in this new background? Because if there's a little tiny hair.
Yeah, so I don't down res the photo. So I'm shooting 50 megapixel. So they'll get a 50 megapixel image, but they are getting high res JPEGs, which is all AI needs. It doesn't need RAW essentially, unless you change. So as long as I've got all the levels correct, as long as the exposure, shadows, and highlights are correct, which I do, especially with LinkedIn photos or let's say portraits, I get that correct in camera because I'm using my lights to do that. With event photography, you're at the mercy of the venue of the space, so you have no idea what the lights are going to be. But if I'm controlling the lights, then I can control the black levels in the camera I don't have to edit anything in theory. All I have to do is convert from RAW to JPEG. And that's it, and deliver.
Just out of curiosity, what camera are you shooting with? What's your weapon of choice?
I'm 5 DSR, a little bit of an older camera, but it's actually a bulletproof. Yeah. The main reason I like it is because in event photography, it can autofocus in pitch black. So you can actually literally pitch black, no lights at all, and it will autofocus still, which is not possible on any mirrorless camera. Mirrorless cameras can only see what the sensor sees. And if the sensor sees nothing, it can't focus. With DSLRs, it does not use a sensor to focus. So this is one of the better things about DSLRs. Now, there are a lot of other features you get with, so my camera does have face detection. It does have that. For a DSLR, it actually does have a lot of the features. It's because it's a pro camera, but it is missing a few of the newer features that are more available. But the 5DSR, the quality is high, and the fact I can focus in pitch black, which is something I thought, oh, I'll upgrade, and then I just had, pretty much 6 or 7 events a year, where literally the client has chosen to have no lights during the end of their event. They want no lights on the dance floor, so they want it pitch black. And so therefore it's impossible to focus with an iPhone. It's impossible to focus with anything like a mirrorless camera because it just needs light to focus. It doesn't matter how high you crank the ISO, so you're just gonna be focusing on green.
So when you're pressing your flash, is it shooting out an infrared like little?
That's right. So it's sending out an infrared grid. So when I do a half press, it's sending out an infrared grid to,
and it just
well, no,
pulses
no.
that
So
out
that's
there.
no, so no flash. So no one can see this generally, or sometimes it's very faint red. So it's not sending any light out. That's called essentially that's ETTL. So it's not doing any of that. So it's not sending any light out. What it's actually doing is just sending out a faint infrared grid to the subject, probably about a 25-degree width, and then it'll light up the subject, and it does all these grids on people's faces. But it's infrared, or some faint, very faint infrared if you can see it. And then the DSLR has a completely different sensor for autofocus that is infrared sensitive. So unlike the sensor, which has an infrared filter, this one is highly sensitive to infrared. And so it can actually see the grids, it can actually see all the faces or whatever I'm photographing lit up with infrared light. It can focus perfectly. And then when I take the photograph, that infrared grid, of course, turns off. And then take the photograph. Now, there are even more very
What's
basic
emitting that? Is it the camera or the flash
flash.
that's emitting that?
It's a flash,
Flashes.
you can actually buy just a trigger. So this is a trigger. So essentially, it's like a thing you put in the flash shoe. But all it has is the ability to trigger other flashes, but it doesn't have flash. But it does have the infrared emitter as well. So you can use just a trigger to do this. And
I don't think people realize how important this is when they're shooting, because I just went back and I was actually digging through some old photos and I noticed how noisy they were because I didn't have a flash on this one. I was just trying to get away with cranking up the ISO and trying to get some shots. And, because my shutter, I had to drag it a little bit. People that were in motion were blurry. Whereas if I had my flash, which in the olden days, I had a really nice flash, and I remember it doing that. I remember it shooting out those patterns, and then everything was crystal clear sharp because I had nice fast shutter, and then it was synced, and it was just like perfectly sharp and crisp.
That's right.
Being a pro like you, that's why you hire pros like you to walk away with usable, or not just usable, but fantastic.
Yeah, these are generally people like I've heard from clients like 1 or 2 years later saying it's like the photograph I took of them like randomly within 1 second, turned around, saw them, they say, hey, can you take my photo, boom, and then I've moved on to the next person. They come back to me 2 years later, I'll see another event and say that's like the best photograph they've ever had of them. I'm like, okay, it took me like literally half a second to focus and another half a second that's what it's like in my job. That's where AI will take a while. I'm not saying that Optimus won't take over my job in maybe 10 to 20 years, but at the moment I'm kind of secure in my job.
I don't know, man. 3 to 5.
So my one photography tip of the day is going to be related directly to what Guy just said, which is using flash, but you still want to capture the room. So the atmosphere of the colored lights in the room, if you have some, or just the room itself, you maybe want the orange glow that's coming from a room at night or the sunlight coming in. So set your flash to its lowest power. So you have to be manual on your camera, manual on your flash. Set your flash to its lowest power setting, which some flashes will be 1/128th, so 1/28th power. So that may seem a bit odd. And then simply expose for the room, as if like what Guy just said there, if you expose for the room saying, okay, I want the lights in, but the problem is the lights are going to be bright, but the people's faces, let's say on the dance floor, are going to be dark. And that's what you're doing. So you're exposing for the background. So get your exposure. So this is going to be ISO 1600. So little trick here. So if we think about the Sony 16 rule, so Sony 16 rule says ISO 100, shutter speed 100, and f-stop of 16. So if we flip that, in event photography, we generally shoot at f4 because f2.8 will get one person to focus. But if you have 2 people stand next to each other, the chances of 2 people, no, that's not. So f4 is good for 2s, and anything larger than a group of 2, well, actually probably 5 or 6 people, then f5.6, because it's all about how many people are in focus. Bokeh is great, but it's actually the worst thing you could possibly have in event photography because it means that people are going, oh, I'm out of focus in this shot. So only one person in the group's in focus, and that's not good. People want everyone in focus. So 5.4 between f4 and f5.6, but set your flash to the lowest power setting. Be about probably, let's see, 5 to 10 feet away from the subject, and then go and you bring your ISO up. So now your ISO and your lowest flash power setting are the correct exposure. So one of the things I did when I was a very young photographer, I would put my ISO at 100 because I just went, oh, I just want no grain. Worst thing you can do in event photography. Event photography, you're sitting at 800 to 1600, depending on where you are. If it's a daytime event, like a wedding, and it's daytime, and then 200, 400. But for night events where it's artificial lighting, you're going to be sitting at 860, which is not a problem for modern cameras. But yeah, have your flash at very low power settings, so you're only lighting up the subject, and maybe the people behind them will fall out of, and so therefore your subject's going to be the one in not only in focus but also the one who's lit correctly. Everyone else is going to be underlit. And if you have another one for group photos, so if you are the designated photographer at your friend's wedding and you've just said, okay, I'll take some group photos, make sure people are not in a horseshoe shape.
No, you
Get
just
them in
hire
a straight
pro.
line.
Don't take the bait. If somebody asks you to shoot their wedding, I'm
yeah.
telling you right now, as somebody
do
who's
it.
gotten roped into this multiple times, don't do it. Because even if you get the gear, like I forgot the flash, and or I didn't want to rent it because it's just one of those things where if you are going to do it, pros, just as Carl was saying, there's lots of math that goes behind this as far as years of experience to get that right exposure. Otherwise, you're going to ruin
Especially
somebody's.
weddings.
It only happens once,
yeah,
maybe.
because you don't have a second chance. So
Yeah.
if someone says, "Hey, can you take some photos on a phone at a wedding?" That one's actually not so bad because the phone will fix a lot of exposure. It has very deep focus. So, but if someone hands you a camera and say, "Hey, I see you've got a nice camera. Can you shoot some photos at a wedding?" Or even a birthday party. Birthday parties are interesting, but birthday parties are the ones sometimes say, "I can take some photos." My only thing is make sure people stand in a straight line if you're photographing them, because the sensor, so the way focus works, focus does not curve. So if people like to stand in a U shape because I like to be equal distance from the camera, but that's not how photography works. It focuses in a straight line. So the sensor is flat, so therefore your subjects have to be lined up in a flat row. So think school photos. School photos, everyone's on a flat row, or lined up along an edge. So same thing. So if you see people hyper curved and you've got a large sensor camera, try to get them to stand in a straight line, or find a straight line in the venue or in the space for them to stand along. So if you're at a garden party and there's an edge to the grass and the concrete, say, hey, can you all stand along the edge of the grass? And then you move back 5 meters and take the photograph, and everyone will be in focus. It'll all look nice. When you have a U-shaped, especially if you have flash, the people on the closest to you will be, because the inverse square law, they're going to be well overexposed, and the people in the center of the U shape are going to be well underexposed. And there's some stuff you can do in editing if you shoot raw and you have, but it's nearly impossible to fix. So people are just going to be overexposed and underexposed. So yeah.
For time's sake, we got some stuff from Omar that I want to jump into before we go over to the questions. So Omar, were you able to pull up those behind the scenes pics from the event? And thank you for that, Carl.
Yeah, I was, and I hope my audio is a little bit better now.
Yeah, it's sounding good.
Earlier. Great. Yeah, so here's a couple just random videos from our event earlier. Let me pull it up. Sorry.
So Sony FX6s.
Yeah, so this is the master control right here. And again, as you mentioned, we load everything in. There's our main rack right there.
So can you pause it and break that down? What's in there?
Sure. Yeah. So I wish I had a better picture because it's
all right.
a little blurry.
We'll get the point.
That on the top part there, you've got an array of HyperDecks. There's 4 of them there. The Studio 4K, and then under that are the HD minis. It's for program record, program backup, clean feed record, and clean feed backup. And below that, we've got our ATEM Constellation 2ME HD. We do everything in 3G, so HD works fine here. Under that, we've got a talkback converter 4K for our fiber return for cameras, up to 8 channels. Under that is it's a Matrix Switch Corporation 32 by 32 3G SDI switch. So it's our
and this is going locally to iMag and then streaming to pay-per-view?
Correct. So there's a front of house operator that operates lighting, front of house audio. So, the handheld mics for the ring announcer, for any interviews that are done for the auditorium there. Plus they have, you kind of see in the back, they have this truss built there in the background. That's permanent at this venue. So there's an operator there that runs the front of house. So we'll feed them basically a truck feed, the program feed into I think they're using Resolume. Sometimes they use another ATEM. And then they'll switch between the program feed while the fights are happening and other custom graphic packages that they trigger while the fighters walk out. So
And so delay on
um,
all that for the audience, it's seamless, and there's not like a
so
bunch of frames
yeah,
where.
the 5994. I mean, we're not gen locked or anything like that. So we have a little bit more latency than we could, but we use Sony FX6s here, so they're pretty fast on their SDI out, and we pass everything through 5994. So it seems to be acceptable, and it's a pretty
So it's
deep venue too.
1080p 5994. That's the res.
Correct. hmm
Okay.
So yeah, just being at 60 frames per second helps a lot with the latency to the iMac. There's definitely some latency, probably 3 or 4 frames, I would guess. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 5. I haven't timed it exactly. But if you're back of venue or mid venue and you look up at the LED wall, it's pretty, it's not super noticeable. And most of the time it's fight action, which
Yeah.
obviously it's not people's lips moving. I mean, you can hear the crack of the leg and might just catch the end of it up above or something like that. But yeah. So down below we've got we use ISO records on the ATEM SDI. So it's definitely, as you mentioned earlier, it's like it's the high end of the low end. Do you know what I mean? So we use
Yeah,
pretty
for sure.
affordable gear. It's a pretty big event. I mean, they fill about 1,000 seats at this venue. So
Do you
they do
show
pretty
in
well.
this
But
video, if you play it through, does it show your replay area?
it might. Let me keep playing it. So these are the
Yeah,
operator
because if you could talk a
TD. That's
little
the director.
about graphics and yeah, what are we seeing
Yeah.
here?
So this. Let me see. It's kind of hard to see, and you probably can't see my mouse, but the middle seat here in the second row, that's graphics. We're using vMix to trigger pre-rendered graphics. So they're pre-rendering them in After Effects with some graphics package that they've modified. And that's what they're using to trigger, or we're using vMix to trigger pre-rendered. So we do about 4 fights at a time just to keep the vMix instance like not from bogging down with 200 assets. But that's how we trigger graphics. And it's just key fill down the downstream key. That was our main A1
So is
to
that an
BM3.
Ultra Studio or what? How does that work? Can you explain that
Right.
key
So
fill hardware?
yep, sure. So it's a vMix. It's actually a laptop. It's the laptop vMix has on the reference systems. If you've ever been on there, it's that one.
Yeah,
So if
on
you
their
need it,
website.
you can get that. Yep. And we output to a deck link in a Sonnet box. So it's a deck link
Okay.
duo. And we'll
Thunderbolt.
do yep, Thunderbolt. Or you could use an Ultra Studio. It would be fine for this as well because
Yeah.
an Ultra Studio HD or 4K will do the key fill.
And then are they
So we send
triggering
it
those
out
with a Stream Deck, or is there anything button wise? How are they just mouse
manually. We're
clicking?
using the mouse clicking. We're using the because there's a lot of assets and you don't know who's going to win, and that's a lot of extra programming that's necessary if you're going to put them onto the Stream Deck. That would take a lot of time. So we just use the pages within vMix interface to group all the assets within each fight.
And then communication wise, to tell that graphic are you guys just in such a rhythm that they already know the fighters and they already know what to queue up? Or are you talking to them, or the TD is talking to them, or how does that work?
Yeah, so this first row right here, you have the TD, you have the director, and you have the replay operator. No, we have a comm solution. That's one it's actually Doug Johnson's comm solution. I watched his videos like, I don't know, 3 years ago, and I built the same one, and it works pretty good. There's definitely some weirdness
And
with
that's
the
based on an
X32.
X32. Yeah.
X32 rack, that's right. And then we have a 24 channels of wireless, not channels, it's one channel or 2 channels, but we have 24 headsets for Hollyland Solid Comm C1s. So those are and I've got that going via 4-wire into the X32. And then I've got a bunch of Stream Direct triggers to be able to bring up the levels to different mix buses on the X32 to be able to do my party lines and stuff to get out to the commentators and to talk back that way. And it's pretty convoluted and not fun to deal with, but it works pretty well when it's working, and it works most of the time. So keep playing it here if you guys want to. And it was, as you mentioned, like I showed this. I spent about 45 minutes on After Hours before this event. This is the day before when I was setting up for the boxing show. That's a new addition right there. I wonder if I can go back. Right here. So this is a new addition right here. I purchased a ScionView, which is a shading device that uses IP to talk to the FX6, and you could do it with the FX9 if you have the fiber back, or sorry, the XD back. But yeah, we were able to do full. It's not full shading control. It's basically all the settings you have on the camera, like the internals. The same thing you'd get with monitor and control with Sony's application. You could get in this device, but you have it hooked up to an output on the ATEM. Auxiliary 12 is what I had it hooked up to. And every time we switch cameras, I have it feeding into omniscopes here. And when I change the camera, it changes the camera on the output of the ATEM. And then I've got a full double diamond right here to be able to shade make sure the exposure's there. I have another one set up there with false colors.
And Jeff Keithley's not here, but when I was on his tennis event, that's the exact same setup, ScionView with no omniscope, and that was for the moving tennis outdoor. So we were having, clouds come in, and the shading op was having to press that button, pick that camera, and then go ahead and make adjustments. And it's a pretty cool device. I mean, short of having a panel for each camera, it was nice being able to just punch up one, make the adjustment off air, and then push it on air.
Yeah, I've only used it on 2 events now, and I'd say it's good for what it does. It can be a little bit finicky, especially with the FX6, because there's you have to use a USB-C to Ethernet adapter to be able to get control with that one, and only certain ones of a certain generation of USB-C to Ethernet adapter with a certain chipset works, and finding the right one is hard. And then you've got to set your static IPs in a certain way that the device can find
so
it.
It's not all native like the $250,000 Sony or Panasonic ecosystems where it's end-to-end and you get all the nice controls.
Yeah, and the big difference is that you don't have full control like you would with a proper shading protocol.
Yeah, you're not going to have master pedestal, and you're not going to have red and green individual.
Yeah,
you have
true blacks and stuff. You have RGB, so you have just you're changing your tint and your white balance basically.
And then you've got focus, you've got iris, you've got gain, shutter.
You can do that stuff too if it's a native lens. If it's a native E-mount lens on the FX series, then you can get iris control, which is the big one. That's mostly what we're riding during any particular show. You're setting all of your color balances and stuff ahead of time, and if you're in an indoor venue like we are here and consistent lighting, it doesn't change too much. So you're doing all that hard work ahead of time, making sure it all lines up, all your camera settings are the same, and then you're really just riding the iris a bit. Occasionally you have to fix some things if you point the camera in a different direction and stuff like that. But it's also pretty hard to do that 6 cameras with one device like you see here. It's one device. You usually have an array, 1 per camera. So, but it was a nice addition. That was one of the things
I got a lot of respect for you, man,
setup.
pulling off what the big trucks would just charge an arm and a leg. So it's interesting because that's one of the democratizations of video production that we're seeing, is that productions that would just never gotten this kind of airtime or this kind of viewership. I mean, because I don't know what your viewership is, but there's a market for this, obviously, because somebody's paying you. So it's interesting to see that, in the past, this just wouldn't have been done. So it wouldn't have been aired, just like it would have been some guy with his handycam in the audience just going, I recorded it and we could post it to YouTube later. And then it's all grainy in one camera, not very good. But yeah, what you're doing is it's cool because it gives those fighters pro looking coverage, and for their reels or highlight reels. I mean, and people online that want to see their favorites, it's really cool.
Yeah, these type of shows, a lot of them are they're pro shows, so they're sanctioned by the California State Athletic Commission. But there's amateur fighters on there too, and that's primarily the audience, are friends and family and people that know these people. So you have 15 or 16 fights, 2 fighters per fight. Multiply those people out, and you might have 250. 300, 500 pay-per-view buys. I don't know the details of that, but the boxing show, actually, the night before of what I was just showing here, it's the same setup but different show. That went to DAZN, so we brought in a different transmission system to get to DAZN, but so that's a proper broadcast. Streaming channel, but they do big fights there. So, but thanks for letting me share. And like I was saying on after hours, I showed I spent about 35 minutes going through the whole setup, and there's only a few people there, but I mean, this community has been given me so much over the last couple of years that like being able to do that and having a client that's cool with me doing that type of stuff is pretty extraordinary. So like, it feels good
I
to be
mean,
able to show this and
yeah,
share this
I'm
and
super
let
thankful
people
for
know.
you to show that stuff because it gives me insight as to what other people are using, and then when I go on other projects, it's like, oh yeah, did you know that you could do it with this? Because some people just have the shield of like, no, that's too expensive. No, we got to call in the big guns to do that, and then all of a sudden it's just like, well, you're shading and you're trying to do too much with your guys, and you're overwhelming them. So it's kind of like, yeah, you could
I'm
use this
definitely
piece of equipment.
I'm definitely fighting in a couple weight classes above that what this equipment
Yeah, that's what I'm
should be
saying.
doing, to be honest, you know. But here
Yeah,
we are.
I'm impressed. I'm definitely impressed. But that's again, this show and our community. I think a lot of us are like that. Not everybody gets to have the luxury of all the seats filled with all the proper operators. I mean, seeing Thursday night football when I got to tour it, now that that was super impressive. Just seeing like 20 channels of replay. It's like what just that was a truck. Just replay is a truck. Grant's now back online, so I'm going to pass this back over to Grant, and it looks like I could jump into some questions. Thanks again, Omar, and for Carl for kicking things off.
Nice work. You don't have to. Doing a great job. But I'm happy to take the questions that we've got. You
Take the
handing it
reins.
back. You did enough last week. That's cool, Omar. Thanks for showing. That's sweet to see. I'm loving seeing the full. It feels like it's the difference between that full just amateur, really like one or two people doing something, and then a full broadcast, with a massive team. You've kind of split the difference there, right? Like you're somewhere in the middle, and it seemed like a decent sized team. You've still got that, you like a crew wise is still dedicated people
Yeah.
to tasks and things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had there's 8 at the master control, including myself as the engineer. Then we have 6 5-man cameras. We have a 35-foot jib, that comes in and shoots there. We got control to that camera too with the ScionView. You have and a tilt-a-motor on a Canon 17 to 120. So yeah, I mean it's not like a huge budget. I mean it's bigger than probably a lot of budgets a lot of people deal with, but not for the level of crew and teams and things that we have going. But I've built my kit over time. I started out with just the one ATEM Mini SDI 2.5 years ago with the same client doing a club show, and now this show is filling a thousand person tent. So we kind of had to grow with them, and I kept buying stuff is really what I did. I just kept spending money,
Yeah.
and rate didn't really go up, but they let me do a lot of stuff. So but they're really great. I mean,
Right.
they're I'm fortunate to be able to work with companies that let you kind of learn with them on some level.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's how you climb the ladder a little as well, right? Is that this event leads to another, someone else seeing what you're doing, and that's how it all grows, which is awesome. It's great that Office House has kind of been along the journey with you. It's really cool, really cool. All right, we have a question here from Taylor. Guy, you gonna read it? You gonna be reader? We've mixed it
Yeah,
up a
sure.
bit.
I'll go ahead and read this one. Taylor Sunderhouse asks, Omar, when putting iMag into Resolume, what video card did you use to get video into Resolume?
Omar?
I believe they had a deck link as well. It actually wasn't my instance of Resolume, so I'm not entirely sure. But I think they either had an Ultra Studio or a deck link. So as I mentioned, because we have a bit of latency on the iMag, when the fighters walk out, they walk out in front of the 20-foot LED wall. And during that time, we don't show our feed. We trigger custom fighter graphics specific to that fighter as they're walking out. So when the jib swings around and picks up the fighter on the stage in front of the LED wall, you're not getting that infinity loop that you can get with a little bit of latency. So really that our feed, which is the program feed, only goes to the house when the fight is actually happening, or they're doing interviews on the sidelines or on the outside the cage or even inside the cage afterwards. But yeah, so I think they were just using a deck link or a Ultra Studio.
I mean, Resolume particularly is quite universal in what it can use for in and out, which is nice. So, yeah, probably is using something like that. The Blackmagic stuff is great for that. I just did an event. I was doing a webcast of a big general meeting. We call them annual general meetings that businesses have to have here. And I just wanted to have a few loops sitting in the ATEM that I could cut to, so just kind of safety loops. And so I just had QLab running, and I had the Sonnet and the quad deck link. Had 4 outs that just had a couple of statics and a couple of loops that were sitting there. And then I was also using on the same computer a couple of the inputs on that deck link card going into Zoom and sending off for people to be able to see the show as well. And so, yeah, it was pretty amazing what you can do just with the Blackmagic gear like that. That worked great, and I had embedded audio on them as well. And yeah, it worked really nicely. Sky, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I had the opportunity of doing one of the big trucks at one of the casinos, I think Santa Bernardino or something like that, for the Golden Boy experience and the Oscar de la Hoya card. And I got to be the guy up on the ring doing the slow motion. And when I came back down, they would always make sure they would wipe the camera off because the blood and the spit would be coming at me, apparently. So I thought, do you have one of those cameras? And do you have somebody to wipe off the camera?
We've
That's
got
awesome.
we've got blood on our announcer consoles from time to time, which sit ringside. So we got to carry some disinfectant wipes are in our kit now.
A cleaning kit. Yeah, nice. Awesome.
Didn't get that at the weddings.
So by way of a question to Guy, I wanted to give an explanation as to my tardiness, and that was to say that I've been playing around, as you've heard me talk about, ChatGPT Codex, particularly in the command line interface, and being able to do a whole bunch of stuff. And a shift that's happened for me in the last week or so is not only using ChatGPT to generate content, to generate websites or create applications, but also to use it to update other applications or to ingest content into other applications. And so my use case in this is some software called Events Air, which is just some software for running events. And so being able to generate content and then upload that has been amazing. Well, the next shift is actually to create essentially an agent that other people could use when they give access, right? So give access to when you give API keys to your software, then give that access to this application that I'm creating, so that then you can say in natural language, be able to just say, hey, I've got all these attendees and all their mobile numbers need to have a plus in front of them. Go through and check every contact and add a plus to it. Like simple data things that you would actually manually go through, or go and change the colors of every session or whatever it is, and you just naturally say it and it works out how to do it. So anyway, I'm doing that, but in the process, I'm realizing that my development environment, needs to grow up, and so I need to have a local development environment, and then a server. And so, Guy, I know that you're doing some of this as well. Essentially, what happened though is that I think I had a web server system running on the Mac, which is I use MAMP, MAP, or MAMP, I don't know how you say it, MAMP server. And I think I also had another local web server running. And so I was asking Codex, which I which I had given full access. All right, which is probably
So you
not a good
really trust
idea.
that guy, Sam Altman,
Yeah,
right?
that's
He's
yeah,
really
that's
like
right.
a trustworthy dude.
I gave it full access, and I said, I'm having this conflict, with the web server. Can you, look at it? And so it starts looking through the services that are running on my computer.
And just started
Um,
killing him.
well, I don't know what it did exactly, but it definitely, like, the fact that everything was running fine and then all 4 monitors just died, but Zoom was still working, says to me that it just killed a service that was
So the way that I'm doing it,
necessary.
and this is the way Churi got me on this path. So this is relevant to everybody here. Actually, it's really cool. What we've done is we're taking a separate computer because he started this on a really old computer and said, "Hey, I installed Claude Code on a
Right.
different computer," and he said, "I'm going to buy one. So if you want to join me in the fun, buy one of these." And this should be like what we did with Tony Mobley with the Raspberry Pi. We should get a bunch of people together and just buy this B link and do what we did, which was we put Proxmox. So you just wipe Windows off. You just download Proxmox, put it on a USB stick, install it, and then put Ubuntu on that, and then put Claude Code on that. So now you've got this little box that's isolated, and you can
Right.
store all your files. Because when I was doing that SDI to OMT app in ChatGPT, it drove me completely crazy because it was trying to store the stuff in the cloud and it would run out and forget, like, oh, what are we working on again? And it's like, dude, I've been working on this for days and you're like forgetting and making me refresh and have to go back and click. But with Claude Code, I'm able to keep it localized. And then I also have this sandboxed isolated machine that, it
Right.
can't mess anything up on my main machine. I'm just doing that putty to go SSH into it. And then I'm able to work everything through a web browser from there. So that machine just stays, in its own little world. But it's really,
Yeah.
I've developed some really cool stuff. I was showing Sky before the show this little app that I made that was kind
I
of a
saw it.
happy
Yeah.
accident. Oh, you did see it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming together really well. And then, in fact, I'll probably be asking people to beta test it next week by the time I iron out a few more things. I'm new to developing. I mean, this is just in the last week
Pick
that
me.
I've figured. You want to
Well,
join in the fun?
I think, we talk about, like, and you made the point there, Guy, before when Carl was saying maybe 10 to 20 years, there'll be, and I think the rate at which things are advancing, it feels like what used to take a year is taking a month, because it is advancing so rapidly that I feel like it's taking a mind shift all the time. Like, for me, is to think about it in a different way. Blue Melnick has been doing a whole bunch of developing these apps and stuff that are mind blowing. And he keeps kind of saying, I mean, they're kind of proof of concept, but I'm like, they're far more than proof of concept. They're ready for production applications. And that's the shift that's happening for me, is that, yes, we were able to, when I first started using ChatGPT, it was copying and pasting text, like generate some text and I'll paste it in. And then I started doing some coding. Okay, yeah, change this code. Okay, that was okay. Copy, paste, copy, paste. It was that whole process. Then it started going, well, hang on, maybe it can actually change the code itself, having access to a file and read and write the file. So now I'm doing that. But the big shift now is, what if it's agentic stuff, right? Like, it's creating an agent, and now thinking, okay, ChatGPT working as an agent for me is making changes to different things. I saw that I gave ChatGPT access to my Asana to-do list. Well, now I'm able to say, what's on my to-do list today? What do you think I should do now? What's important? What are the things that are coming up? Like, all of that, it's starting to work as an agent. And then the next shift, as I was just explaining, is me creating an agent as a service for other people to be able to use to interface into very specific, software and things like that. And I've got a couple of cuts and bruises along the way, like, of learning how not to do it. But it is a steep learning curve in some ways. But then in many ways, I think I've said before, where I'm starting to work on multiple projects at exactly the same time. I'll have multiple windows open ChatGPT or Codex is working on something and it might take 10, 15, 20 minutes. And so I'm also working on a whole nother project. And so the speed at which I'm working is mind blowing now. So it's a pretty amazing time to be playing around with this stuff. And so now you're not held back by the knowledge of how to do something. It's really, what is it that you want to create? And I
I
think
didn't even think this stuff
sorry.
was possible. The stuff that I've been asking it to do, I mean, with the natural language, I'm just talking to it, make that box blue. Can you make it so that it groups all these cards in a layout? And then I want to be able to have the user pull it up or down. It just wrote all that for me. I'm like, what? Like you can do that? And it took somebody like Chirig just showing me the basics to get me a taste of it, of what it could do. Because I didn't realize it was that easy. I thought that it was super hard. And I'm sure it is. I mean, for the people that have went to school for this stuff. And I remember doing all the HTML and, having to href this and do all that. And now I'm like just talking to the thing and it's creating just beautiful
Well, and
stuff.
what's the price point of that little B link? I mean, the price point is like
yeah, it was $399, so $400 for a
the price of a
32 gigabyte
pair of tennis shoes.
Yeah. Well, the thing that got me was I was like Chirig's time of him just showing me what he built, because he had put all these other sub agents in there already that optimized for SEO. He had made like these 5 things, and I'm like, oh, he's already got more than 4 hours into this. So if I was paying him $100 an hour, I mean, I'm just gonna get all that knowledge of his agents already. So I'm already ahead of the game just by getting, set up with him. So I'll be interested to see what you wind up doing, Grant, as far as how your agents work and what they're able to do. And plus coming back on this show and letting people know, because I feel like we're taking the leads. I know Omar was actually, I heard, ahead of us a few months ago when he was using Cursor to develop a Zoom Rooms custom AV app, which, Omar, were you a coder before, or how did you even start into that?
Just like you guys, I dove in with Cursor and built an application, and then it started to get too big for its own britches. And I think even 6 months ago when I was working on this, because I was working on it for probably a month and a half before NAB, it was really good at a lot of things, but there's a few things that it was not that good at. And those things started like looping around and doing a lot of stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people that have done a lot of vibe coding have experienced that with the doing things that you don't want it to do, and how to segregate stuff so you can keep things in like partitions, so it only works on the thing, but then it still does the thing that you don't want it to do. And you go back and you tell it to do it, and you have to make a lot of stop. I mean, it became a little bit, at some point I was like, well, is this what I'm doing, or am I doing video production?
I've got $1 million worth of gear sitting over here.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, the application itself was taking up so much time, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I could just release it. I never did. It's on ice sitting somewhere in my hard drive.
Yeah, that's the thing with my little app that I started building. It's just like, that you could sell this, because I said, how much would this go for? And it was like, you could get $9 a month for this, and for the baby version, and then you can make a pro or a Teams version and get like maybe $50, and then to start doing the math, and it's like, yeah, so shoot for in 5 years 10 users or 10,000 users at $50, you're like $500,000. And I'm like, whoa, this is like a real thing. Like you can make money in this world. I'm like, I would have never thought that I'd be a developer, but it's all about the idea, like you come up with a good idea that has a market and you're off to the races, but otherwise it's a hobby.
That was the big thing that stopped me, actually, Guy, is I was trying to like think about, okay, how can I put this application to market? I wasn't trying to make a bunch of money, but I wanted users to use it, right? And how to scale that to users is really what put the coffin, or the nail in the coffin, for me, because as soon as I release this to users, I'm beholden to users, right? And I didn't feel like the application, the cursor, and all these other things, and maybe it is 6 months later, it might be there, but I didn't feel like it was to the point where I could support a user base with it, right? If something happened where these people are paying me $9 a month or $5 a month, or even one-time fee of $5, and the thing starts bugging out, which inevitably it will. How am I going to fix this? Because I could barely comprehend I understand, like I spent a lot of time reading, through the code base and understanding the components and stuff, but really not at a level where I should be able to support paying clients. So that's really what stopped me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's really wise. I mean, I've had that experience, Blue and I have had that experience with Obvio, where we still haven't technically gone 5 years later, we still haven't technically gone public with it, because we continue to support the growing, but only small growing user base that comes through another mentoring program or coaching program that Blue runs. And so we have 300-400 users, and we have full-time customer support, and we've got developers and things. But yeah, it takes you have to think, am I ready to pull the trigger on that, and to how are you going to support it? And so it's something that I'm thinking about as well, even with this little thing, is because I think I would do a free open beta, and that would be a way that would just be like, it's free and open, and then okay, at some point, and so maybe the expectation is a little bit lower. Then it's free, okay, it's working, and then you run that for 3 months or something, and now it's like, okay, we're now turning it on. It's going to be $25-50 a month or whatever, and see who does that. And maybe that is self-supporting, maybe it's not. But the thing that's interesting in this too, is all these companies that are, like private equity, funded companies that are cashed up and ready to acquire. Sometimes it's like they can come along and acquire this product that you have as some sort of application, the thinking behind it, the design of it, whatever, and they roll it into another product. I can imagine that guy with some of these other to-do applications or project management applications or whatever, that they now buy your application, and
Yeah, because the one that I was building, I took some of my knowledge from NetSuite. So I used to use this software that cost $8,000 a month. So I took some of the things, like when you create an opportunity, that you could say, hey, the likelihood of this to close is 50%, and then it would weight that only the 50%. So if it was a $10,000 gig, it would say, hey, you could look at maybe 5,000 of that, and if you drag it lower, like the likelihood to close is like 30%, it will take it down to $3,000. So now when you're looking at your year, you're going, oh, I better hustle. I better get more opportunities that are likely to close, or what can I phone call can I make, email, how can I move this down the road? But I took that knowledge from that big giant and started to put it into this little $5 a month app, which for the people that need it, like when I was showing it to Sky, he was just like, whoa, that's really cool. Like, but I'm like, yeah, it's because the knowledge that is from a QuickBooks, it's from a NetSuite, it's from the things to do app. So I took the things for production people that they need, quick math and things like that, and to-dos. So I'm excited. I mean, it's one of those things that where you go, you're right, Omar, like, where do you go? All right, I got to hire customer support. I got to hire a developer. Yeah. This is actually it's going to cost me money. It's going to be a negative venture. Yeah. And my reputation can get damaged if I don't fix it, if it breaks and somebody's to-dos and all their invoicing and everything's in there.
Disappears. Well, but it sounds like you could charge $7,000 a month. It sounds like that, it wasn't 8,000. You're going to do it for the cheap price of 7,000. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana, and he asks, is there a business model for teaching or tutoring over Zoom?
Tony.
I could just say yes.
Yeah.
And that would be the answer. But I'll elaborate. First, I would like to say that you can go back to the beginning of the pandemic and think about the pods that people purchased that were put in place. And so those have not ended. And by that, what I mean by that is that in some instances, they have become new schools, private schools. Sometimes they have been converted to charter schools. But the reason that I bring them up in the context of this is because that is a business model that is making money right now. And it started out as virtual and hybrid. So it was a combination that worked. Now, the real answer to the question I think that Roscoe was asking was, there is no limit to what you can make using Zoom, Teams, or any other virtual platform. One example that I would give is the example of a house of worship where they are using Bible study or biblical studies. Um, that is one example that is, I personally utilize it, so I know that that one does work. Now, it's not a business model, but it is something that is used in that way. I have personal knowledge of educators who are charging an hour of what they make as tutorials in Zoom. And so this is a real thing, and there are people that will continue to do it. And you have to remember that there are parents who think outside of the box, and they want their children to have extra. They want them to have every advantage possible. So even though they may be a good student, they want to give them some tools, and they want to reach out to experts that can help them. The other thing that I want to lift up is YouTube University. YouTube University falls into this pattern from the standpoint of, if you are utilizing YouTube, one of the things that you're going to do right away is pay for not having commercials. So you're going to embrace this opportunity for education. You're going to utilize all of the great tutorials, education opportunities that are available in YouTube, and you're going to pay YouTube so that you don't have to deal with commercials. So that is one way in which YouTube is making money in terms of YouTube University. And then there are, as I said, there are a lot of models where you are able to utilize individual students in a group session or one-on-one. And so the payment that can be made, there is no limit to it. It's what people or parents are willing to pay. And I could go on and on. During our conversation, I noticed Sky asked a question about Atlas. So I did take a look at what Atlas had to say about this very question, and I got 4 points, but I won't share them now because I thought I was going to be the only one that was going to be speaking about it. So I did a lot of research, but since we have other panelists that want to talk about it, I'm going to stop here.
Okay. Carl?
So I'm going to add on to Tony's tangible resources is another thing where in your business model. So now I'm a fan of tangible resources. I have books behind me. So in education, if you're going Zoom, you want to be careful of not providing everything digital, especially if you have a classroom. So you have a group of peers. If they all have the same tangible resources, which would be essentially a textbook, let's just call it that, and a workbook to work in, and essentially their workbook is then, and then essentially from that workbook they can populate the answers digitally after the class. Essentially, they have to do it during class. So we'll call this, let's say, homework. So I'm trying to just use nomenclature from a classroom scenario, but tangible resources, i.e., dead trees, is actually really valuable for, I guess, what we call Generation Alpha, because it is a bit of a novelty to them. So therefore, once something becomes a novelty, they will enjoy it. And to keep younger students, homeschool students essentially, engaged, surrounding them with physical books is a good way of doing that. So this is one business approach I've seen with homeschooling here in Australia, which has much more strict restrictions than in the United States, is that one of the best practices that any institution wants to set up for supporting homeschooling via Zoom is actually having physical media. And therefore the state government who controls education in Australia, they're the ones who say yes, they'll sign off. You can either use resources that are approved by the state government that go out to all schools already, or you can generate your own that meets the curriculum. And so this is one thing I've actually noticed here, especially in South Australia with homeschooling, is that tangible resources does help students stay focused rather than having everything digital, because it's only one click away until they're off watching a YouTube video. So that's tangible resources is a really good thing that kids can have open in front of them while they're on Zoom and follow along. So it's something from pretty much the 20th century. So teachers could actually see everyone open up your books, that, and essentially you can do the very similar thing on Zoom now. But students do engage with that, because they can flip through the book, they can go forward and see what's coming, rather than just being guided by whatever the screen share is in Zoom. So that's another big thing too.
Gutenberg would be very, very happy that the press still has a role.
Well, without that, I wouldn't have a wall back here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I think it's a. I'll let Sky go. Let go, Sky.
But your dulcet tones are just so mesmerizing, Grant, and we're so happy to be in the same airspace together. The Skype days was when I first saw teaching virtually, if that's the phrase you want to use, in guitars. A guy would get on, he would have his customer or client get their guitar out, and they would play and riff back and forth. And this was 10 plus years ago. And of course, the student said, I just want to figure out how to get around girls, and guitar playing seemed to do it. So that's why the motivation was there for somebody. But then when COVID hit, yes, my wife was teaching in the local school district, and it was a horrible experience because, again, we were all thrown into something that was completely underpowered and under supported. But the mandate was, yes, we have to continue with the education process. And we all met each other because of that. Guy Cochran, in fact, was why I'm here on office hours, because he said, hey, there's a group of people getting together trying to figure out education. And so Chris Clark came on, and many others that came into and John Idelson, and talked about the opportunities of education. But then we think of the Matrix movie, right? When all he had to do was, tap into a certain thing, and all of a sudden he knew how to do a martial art. And Grant, I was thinking of you as you were talking. Your mindset is what is now harder for you to change than the education or knowledge or wisdom, than the actual act of doing the thing that has historically taken years of repetition. So yes, your mindset is harder to change than the actual act of making an app right now. So those were some of the different instances. And then Bill Davis's wife, I know pre-COVID, was teaching English to through a system that was well established to students overseas. And so this concept of a business model, and it was said earlier, if you want it as a hobby, yes, there are opportunities for that, because there was lots of things I didn't know how to do. And now clickety click and YouTube on my phone, it takes me to this section of how to not cut my finger off when I use a saw. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, I would just say, Roscoe, that there's a lot of coaching programs, and actually Blue and his wife Barry run a program of teaching people how to run virtual events and coaching programs online, and it's totally the way to do it because of the reach. So there's no geographic limitations. And then I think particularly for group coaching or tutoring is really key. One-on-one is kind of an obvious thing, but it gets to another level when you can do it in a group. And I think it's actually easier to do a larger group online than it is in person. And in the way that you're able to engage and to keep them interested and to keep things moving. So yeah, I think there totally is a model we've got. We're going to have to keep going because we're running out of time. There's a couple of questions that I want to get to. And Sky, you've got one about Atlas. Have you been using that?
I was just introduced to it by our mutual acquaintance, David Paskin. I usually take something into ChatGPT, I rework it, and then I bring it back over to the website and or something. But this having a web browser that has the AI in it, I'm still trying to work it through. So if you guys have been practicing with it, What have you found and how is it working?
Tony?
Well, as I said, I did ask the question that Roscoe had asked, and this is what it gave me. So it's direct service, traditional tutoring, how it works, one-on-one, platform, Zoom, Google Meets, um, and pros and cons of that example. Example would be $50 an hour, 10 plus students weekly, 2,000 a month before taxes. Online membership model, how it works, and so on and so on. It gives us four different examples of how you can use this, and it tells you the example of what you might want to use as the model for payment. So I think that's very cool. And I did that in the context of this conversation today, as the question was about. So I spent maybe 5 minutes at the most while we were talking about other things to be able to do that.
Yeah. Guy?
Yeah, so there's two of these new types of browsers that have the LLMs built in, and one is Atlas and the other one's Perplexity's Comet. Comet is on both platforms. It's on the Mac and on the PC. So I'd watched some videos, and one of them was showing LinkedIn and being able to take somebody's post and scrape essentially all the replies of whoever that person was, create a new list of what company they came from and their email address, and it went ahead and did that. That was Perplexity's Comet. So I was like, let me try this out. I've been wanting to grab the links out of the Discord for office hours that have all the chat links, and so I wanted to put them in a spreadsheet. So I said, let's give it a shot. Let's see if it'll do it. So tediously, Comet went in there, and it was just like very slowly, but it was really weird because on the right side, you tell it what to do, and then I'm in Discord. So the difference here is that not just regular ChatGPT or Gemini, you're actually in this browser where it can move your cursor around and it can do things in line inside of the browser. So it goes in and it starts just manually copying the links and pasting them into Google Sheets, like one at a time. And I was like, this is going to take forever. And so I go over to Atlas on my Mac and I tell it to do the same thing. And it's just like, it just like grabbed, it was like super smart. And it just like grabbed it all and did it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the difference in the two was amazing. Like one was super like tedious and didn't really understand how to do it fast. And the other one was just like, I'm just going to grab everything and I'll take it over. So the other thing that I was made aware of is I've been asking like, why can't these LLMs just go in and grab the transcripts from YouTube? And it's because there's a gatekeeper there. Google says, no, you can't just come in. And Reddit now says, you guys can't just come in here and steal our stuff. So now these things are blocked. If you're in Chrome or Safari and asking ChatGPT to go do this stuff, it gets blocked. It's at the gate. It's just like, you can't tell it to go into Facebook. But with Perplexity and with Atlas, you can, because it is the browser. So you're giving it the keys to go in there and act as you. So it's able to just do things. I asked it to look at all my flagged emails and come up with some replies for my flagged emails for the last week. And it went ahead and did it. And it's just like, here's what I think you should write. And I was just like, oh, let me change that. Let me change that. Okay, go. And this world's changing fast. Like when I started to see some of this stuff, I'm like, man, this is cutting edge now, but this is going to be everybody's daily routine here pretty soon, where these things are just acting on your behalf because they can't, you're giving them permission, and it's going to be dangerous. Like there's no doubt. Like I was even skeptical about giving it permissions. And this morning when Brett Ballou in the chat said, you're basically giving it the keys to your vault. And I was like, oh, I already did. I was like, man, yeah. I must have been clicking really fast on that install because I just gave it the keys to the kingdom to like, go ahead. Yeah. Have everything, all you can eat.
I know. I think that sometimes when I'm like, I don't know where this token needs to go, just here's the token, and it'll be like, oh, you shouldn't post the token here, but sure, I've put it in the right spot now. It's like, and so, and sometimes I think, it's just a drop in in the ocean of the data in the world now that I can always go back and revoke those tokens. But honestly, those agentic type stuff that it's doing now. Another ChatGPT service is Pulse, that I've been playing with, and this is a daily thing, but essentially overnight, what it does is it goes back over certain of your chats and discussions and does a deep dive on some of them, and then just exposes, like, here's some more results we found, or here's some extra things that are based on the things that you've been looking at. So it's almost like a newspaper, for you, about all the things that you're looking into. Again, it's like just things that are happening automatically and happening sort of on a schedule, but works overnight for you, is pretty impressive. So I've been playing with that a lot too. So yeah, it feels like we could have a whole discussion, just a show on AI stuff now, but we are running out of time. But and by running out of time, I'm conscious of panelists, but also the back end team as well. I just want to see, it seems like everyone wants to keep talking about Atlas. I tell you what I want to do, Roscoe. Firstly, Roscoe, we should have you on again because you ask great questions, and that would be fun. The thing that I think about with this is the bigger question is, what does education look like now? Like, Google changed education. It's like calculators changed education, and then Google has changed it. You've got the answers to the world's questions in your pocket. But now with AI, it's a whole nother level. So what is it that coaching and tutoring actually looks like? You're sort of just playing a game to be able to store some information in your head, briefly, to be able to pass an exam to prove that you knew it at one point. Chances are you're not going to remember any of that, and so I think there's a bigger question about what does education look like now. I want to come back to it, Roscoe. Let's talk about the in-person. I'd love to chat about that, in person versus online. We can come back to that next week. And I was going to push your question back as well, but we could answer it quickly because there's a couple of people that could look at that. So, Guy, that question Nick's got there, last one.
Question coming in from Nick McKinney in Johnson City, Tennessee, asking, have multiple M4 Macs from the Mac Mini, the desktop iMac, and also the M4 MacBook Pro have used both Ecamm Live and Mimo Live. I am currently using Mimo. Which two of these two softwares do the panel prefer? Which one is better and why?
Tony?
I am a fan of Mimo Live, primarily because that's what I'm using right now for my show. But one of the important reasons why I'm using it is because there is no limitation to how professional you want to be with it. And I used Ecamm in the early days, and it is not true what I'm about to say right now, but it was true in the early days. When I first started using Ecamm, to me, it was like you were looking at someone who had done something in PowerPoint. You automatically knew that it was something that was done in PowerPoint. And in the early days of Ecamm, that is what I could see, that somebody was doing a video stream and it was using Ecamm. That is not true anymore. However, again, I want to say that we are using Mimo Live. It is fantastic. And I have had the benefit of some of the office hours community to come in and do different things with Mimo Live. And it is fantastic. There is no limitation. I am also using the Alex Lindsay appliance model, where I have a M4 Mac Mini that is dedicated to Mimo Live, And I also have a basic M1 that basic 8 gigabytes 256 that supports the M4. And so that is the infrastructure that I'm using for Conversation with Tony Mobley. And it is totally Mimo Live. And that is the way in which we are now doing Conversation with Tony Mobley. I am extremely happy with it and the things that we are doing with it. And again, they're each time somebody comes in and supports Conversation with Tony Mobley and they bring their own little expertise to Mimo Live, it's just mind blowing.
Guy?
Yeah, I'm not going to throw any shade on Ecamm. I think it's actually a pretty cool app. It's got many more users. I'm in their group. I don't use it now. I used to in the past, and they've done so much more with these dynamic moves that I am jealous of. They are cool, but things like NDI, Ecamm has it, but not at the level that we're talking about with Mimo Live. This show right now is being cut on Mimo Live. This is actually the interface. You can see it right there. Well, let's go into infinity now because it's seeing itself. But basically, it stands for Mimo is multiple in, multiple out. So what you're seeing on the left are the ins, and what you're seeing on the right is the out. So right now we're streaming to YouTube. That's the thing on the right. In the middle, it's kind of like Photoshop where you could add layers, and we've got 2-ups and 1-ups and all that stuff. And what Taylor's doing on the back end is he's got a simple web interface. And I think that's the beauty that a lot of people don't know about, is that you can develop these touch screen displays. So I spent years, I actually used to sell more Mimo Live than anybody, hands down, because I developed a product called the One Button Studio, and I was selling multiple of them a month. And the back end of it was just Mimo Live running on a Mac, and the interface was just a little touch screen on an iPhone to choose your looks, your picture in a picture, whether you want to use the Telestrator, which was Mimo Live. They call it the painter layer. So I've been using it for a long time. Well, I had developers that were in-house that were creating the back end to be able to drive all this. But to the user, they just walked up and they just saw a kiosk. So there's a lot of power under the hood with the APIs and things that Ecamm will never do. That's just not their wheelhouse, that Oliver and those guys are super geeky developers. Again, no shade towards Ecamm. I think it's a fantastic program, and what David Paskin's doing with it looks phenomenal. And it's just a tool at the end of the day. Download them both like you have, and bang on them and see which one better fits your workflow.
Yeah, I think that if you come from a production background and you're and kind of you're in that world of sort of some extra production, that Mimo Live will make a bit more sense. And I mean, it is a higher price point as well, and so that's something to consider. And so, and possibly a little bit more of a steeper learning curve on Mimo Live because of how much flexibility there is and power that there is in it, and potentially a little bit more resource intensive because of that, because of what it's capable of doing. So I feel like it serves a different world. Really, you can do some pretty powerful stuff with it. But as Guy said too, I think Ecamm is pretty amazing as well, the type of stuff that they're able to put out. So very
Absolutely.
good.
One more thing on that is the fact that they're kind of both lucky because Apple is just coming out with fantastic hardware that makes both of these just super powerful machines compared to what a TriCaster was that cost 10 times the amount. So a $499 computer could do what a $5,000 computer used to have to do a couple of years ago. So we're in a great place in time right now.
100%. Yeah, I've got my TriCaster Mini still sitting there, just thinking, what do I even do with that now? I'm not sure I'd trust it. And it can be replaced by an M4 Mac Mini. Pretty amazing. All right. So now to some content recommendations from the panel. It could be YouTube or a video, a movie or something like that. A book. Sometimes Sky comes up with books. Those old things that Carl was talking about. But Carl, take it away.
So I'm not going to go with the book. I'm actually going to go with something free that's from YouTube. So this one is called FD Ancient History. FD technically just stands for Free Documentary. They have a few channels, but the Ancient History one's actually really good. So I have a litmus test when I watch kind of documentaries. It doesn't matter if it's from the BBC or someone who's done it in their bedroom. It's are you talking about stuff that is irrelevant to the subject, and have you missed some pretty big fundamentals? And pretty much from this YouTube channel, now they're an aggregator of documentaries, and as I said, they do cover a lot of other things in history, mainly history though. Pretty much the few documentaries that I've watched from them, they have all passed the litmus test 10 out of 10, which is very rare. So, and essentially what it is, it's not necessarily the channel that's doing this, it's the people who are making documentaries. And what I notice when I get to the credits of each, the team is 4 people. And so you actually, well, essentially maybe a dozen total, but essentially you have usually 2 money people who are executive producers who are paying for it. You have 1 director and writer, they are the one and the same person. So the person directing it is also the writer. And you have 1 researcher. That's it. So that's the 4 people, and there's always too many people. It's interesting. Every documentary I'm noticing here, they're all from different people, but there's always too many people, 2 executive producers, 1 director who's also the writer, and 1 researcher, and then you have all the other people who come in, so who just simply make the production happen, like editors. There's always actually just 1 editor as well. So from a production point of view, I'm looking at these documentaries carefully because I notice they all have the same model, and this is so just 1 narrative, 1 idea gets out. The problem that sometimes even bigger companies like the BBC or other companies that do this, they have kind of designed by committee, and they water down documentaries to the point where they're actually useless for information, and they're just kind of retreading the same thing. And it's almost like a documentary made by AI right now. So a documentary by AI will produce kind of what the BBC is pumping out and Netflix pumping out right now. Whereas this particular one, they're aggregating these documentaries that are coming from a single writer director and a single researcher, which is really important because you have the research going, getting the hard details. Then you have another person who's just a writer director who's taking that very in-depth detail and turning it into something that can be presented in a documentary format. And so for anyone interested in making documentaries on any subject, I would suggest watching 1 or 2 of these documentaries and seeing how they do it. Notice that you can look at the assets they use. You know, they're using some stock footage, they're using some 3D animation that they're buying from stock as well. So there's some stock footage in here and stuff, but it's high quality stuff. But they're also making some reenactments themselves, you can tell. Not too much to keep prices down, and that's how they have such a small crew. But their quality of information is 10 out of 10 as far as this kind of stuff. So FD YouTube channels, so you can put in just FD history. The one I'm showing is FD ancient history. But yeah, so they have probably about a dozen different YouTube channels which cover different topics. Now, the other thing you need to be careful of, they sometimes only have the first episode in the series, and all the other episodes in that series are going to be unlisted and linked at the end or linked in the description. So this way, they don't have way too many, like part 3, part 4, part 5. They won't be on there. They will only be in the description or linked right at the end of the documentary. You'll simply autoplay to the next one, which is unlisted. So that's something to be aware of as well.
Good one. Omar, what you got?
Yeah, I've also got a YouTube recommendation from a pretty small creator here that he's a director of photography in Texas. He's a solo operator. He's a small channel. Like, he doesn't get very many views, but it came up as a recommendation, I don't know, a few months back, and I've watched a number of his videos. And what I really like about him is he's pretty transparent with his financials, which is really interesting and which I find very valuable. And he's a different type of company than I am. He does more, traditional video production. He owns a Burano and some FX9s, and he does live news hits and stuff like that. But his videos are kind of VO with just iPhone recordings of some of the gigs that he does or some of his gear as he's prepping, and he just talks about life as a cameraman, director of photography, and it's really interesting. I think a lot of people in office hours will find his content valuable and interesting.
Nice one. I love those ones that are a bit more obscure and not well known. That's a cool one. What I got next? Sky.
Well, Roscoe had asked, what's the difference between in-person and YouTube? Well, I'm just saying, Guy Cochran was in person and I got a sweatshirt, and I'm appreciative of his knowledge, his wisdom, and his education and support of me personally. But the book that I'm currently, it's called Permissionless by the author is Patrick Moreau out of Portland, Oregon, who is really spearheading a concept called Muse and the science of storytelling. He tells a story of the Charles Darwin's great grandson that failed biology, and even his classmates referred to him as the missing link. But his grandmother, watching the family gathering in a long faced disappointment, offered Charles some something better than sympathy. Christopher, she said, if you can't be first, be peculiar. So I take that advice and share that with the world.
Good one. Guy.
Yeah, for those of you that are just listening, Cranky Cameraman was the Omar recommendation.
We didn't talk about
I
it.
know some people are just going to be
say
like,
the name,
what
did I?
Yeah, because you're in a little tiny box, and I'm like, I can't read that.
Right.
But somebody else, Ike Potter, posted it in the chat as well. And then thanks, Sky, for the reminisce there. In fact, Sky, we met like in Santa Monica, like I was
Yes, a
teaching a
million
class in
years
person.
ago.
Yeah, so I mean, I was one of those guys. who
Early
used to
Final Cut
teach Final Cut.
days.
Yeah, way long time ago. All right, so I'm going to show you my pick. This one is called Kelly Directs. She's on Instagram, and it's just a hoot to watch her work. So when there's a lot of lingo that goes on with a TD. There's put them in boxes. You're in a box, so stay tight. Don't move, because sometimes we don't have a program return on our camera. So let's say you're driving an FX6 and you're looking at your framing and you're trying to frame it with enough headroom or enough side room. So right now, if maybe the TD will put it side by side. Okay, yeah, there. So we're in boxes. So this would be a 2-box. So the director calls it. And so Kelly Directs is the morning news director for CBS. And so she's doing this kind of stuff, but she's calling it. She's just like, and roll the play out. Go. And it's like red deck, gold deck, so there's all this lingo that you hear, like when she doesn't want a graphic to be there anymore, or she'll say lose the upper. So that's another lingo. And so you learn a lot from people like this that do it a lot, because there's syllables in words. And so like lose, like make it go away. So lose the upper instead of like, hey, take away that lower third, like there's certain things that you can shortcut, and watching Kelly Directs on Instagram has just been it's bringing up lots of memories of stressful moments, because working news, I mean, gosh, she can really fire off some quick hits. So watch that, and I think you guys will enjoy it.
Nice one. Tony, what have you got?
So mine is Invasion, and it's an Apple product. It is a quality product, and I am a science fiction nerd. I don't deny it. I am really a science fiction nerd. I am one of those ones who has been through every Star Trek series, but what is unique about Invasion is the quality that Apple has put into it. For example, one of the main stars of the series is a Japanese woman. And when she's interacting with the aliens, she's speaking Japanese. And so it's just so much quality, not just in this particular series, but in everything that Apple has produced over the last 2 years. I could just go run down the names of some of the series that have been on that have been fantastic. And I didn't know if this content was the appropriate content or whether or not it should have been a technology content.
Oh, that's good.
But what I wanted to say about my technology content is that every single thing that I find that I think is meaningful, it goes to Apple Notes, the links, and it's short information about it so that I can always go back to it. But this is what I wanted to share tonight. Invasion. I am on episode 8. This is a 2 episodes left. The series has concluded, and I will finish it tonight. So as soon as we are done, I'm going to watch the last 2 episodes.
Good one. Well done. Well, thank you, everyone. We could have gone for another hour, I'm sure, but it was fun. And thank you each to the panelists and to everyone that was playing along at home and along in the chat. And also thank you to the back end team that were making it happen. Taylor, I saw Taylor, and I saw who else was in there?
Alan?
Alan and Robert. Yeah, that might be the key ones. Thank you. And very good. And if there's anyone is interested in learning and helping out a bit more, you can contact Taylor in Discord and see how it all works and work out how we're using Memo Live to great effect, and have a play and help us out with the show. If you have more questions, then tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Pacific, you can post all the questions to the panel then. Otherwise, you can join us again next week, Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.